Plastic production capacity is expanding. 2022 was the industry's biggest year on record for the construction of new ethane cracker plastic making facilities in the US. Where do we go from here? I've told you some hard facts about what we need to address. If we continue with the status quo for plastic production, which I don't know, might seem tempting for such a complex and overwhelming issue, we signal that we are okay with petrochemical companies making our communities and our planet sicker. The only real option is to make noise and to put up a good fight. So there are many actions that we can take, but having a mindset that supports persistent, determined action is critical to making a lasting impact. So Mom's Clean Air Force wants to emphasize that resilience and coping strategies are things that can empower us to keep fighting against the influence of the petrochemical industries, even when the going gets tough. And those types of strategies vary. We're talking mental, emotional, and even spiritual resilience. It's all key if we want to resist petrochemical propaganda.
Save our earth.
Okay, I want to get straight to the voices from Mom's Clean Air Force staff, and hopefully you can take something away from our authenticity and vulnerability. So we're going to give some advice, tips and tricks about how we deal with eco-anxiety and things that might tempt you to feel powerless.
Dealing with difficult climate-related emotions is something I really struggled with, especially before I started actually working in the climate field with moms. But I think something that's really helped me since then is focusing on what I can control and what action I can take as an individual, and also how I can help others come together to hold politicians and corporations accountable that are ultimately causing this mess. I think my generation has also grown up in the time and the era of climate crisis. So being in community with my peers, my friends, my coworkers, and just naming the emotions that a lot of us feel really helps me find that sense of support while also feeling empowered to work together with others fighting this problem.
I remind myself that it's okay, if not necessary, to maintain a balanced life, and that finding joy and gratitude in family and fun is essential for refueling my work. To me, protecting a proactive and positive spirit also involves recognizing how many people across all generations of the world's population are taking action against climate change. From household composting to global activism, this is a diverse and widespread movement where people are taking action in different ways and at different scales towards one common goal. And remembering this brings me comfort and motivation.
I actually think that working on these issues helps. Just knowing that I'm trying helps. It's useful for me to channel anxiety into action. And even if it's not your full-time job, you can push for climate or environmental action at your kid's school or at your office. You can start conversations, find people in your community who share your concerns. I think it's so helpful to realize that you're not alone, and who knows, it may be a springboard for action.
I think we can talk against this pollution in a way that drives people to action, not towards hopelessness. And how we are leading the conversation, oftentimes messaging can be dire, and looking at how bad things are. I think it's important to be honest. Things do need to change, but we do have the power to change it now. It's not too late for us to shift the needle in the right direction. And I think by focusing on that aspect of the conversation, on what we can do today, and empowering individuals to act today, is one way that we can drive people to action towards hopelessness.
When I talk about pollution with people, I want to drive them toward action, not hopelessness. So how do I do that? I share good news. So for example, more green jobs are on the horizon thanks to electric vehicle adoption. Petrochemical facilities in Cancer Alley are facing tougher regulations when it comes to toxic emissions. And new rules mean interstate air pollution is being addressed and reducing we'll be sure to share some.
So knowing about climate change isn't easy. I know that the more I've learned about climate change over the last several years, the more I have felt emotions like anxiety, grief, sadness, worry, you name it, I've probably felt it. And the number one thing that helps me to cope with all of these climate emotions is having people that I trust that I can talk to about how I'm feeling. I didn't always have that. And right now I'm so grateful to have colleagues and friends that I can share how I'm feeling with, and people who will know what I'm talking about, who don't think I'm crazy for feeling sad about climate change, and people who care enough to take action too. And so having those people that I can talk to, people I know who care, they are what keeps me going in my own climate work. And I'm so grateful for them.
One thing I would say is that in terms of your children, children process information so much differently than we do as adults. And I think you have to talk to your children and find out what they're thinking. What are they learning in school? How is it being discussed in school? What are their friends talking about? Because very often with children, they are very literal. And they become very concerned that they don't necessarily hear and process all the information that's being that they're being exposed to. So you really have to talk to them, and also, be engaged and talk with their teachers so that you can be sure that they are hearing information that's accurate, and to mitigate those concerns of hopelessness and despair.
When I do feel feelings of hopelessness, frustration, anger, even, it's something that I've had to wrestle with and kind of tell myself that I have to keep fighting, even when, all the signs, the news will tell you that, will make you feel like there is no reason to keep fighting. One way I manage it is, well, if it ever gets, that serious, I think that's where my Christian faith comes into it, because, I believe that all things work out for those who trust in the Lord. And all things work out for the good of those who trust in the Lord. So that's really important for me to cope. And it just reminds me, my faith as well, to keep on doing things for those who are oppressed, which we know is very important for a lot of environmental matters, environmental justice. And that keeps me motivated to, at some point, pick up the baton and keep running the race. The advice I'd give to other people is to just ask yourself the tough questions. Can I keep worrying about something that is out of my control? And from there, you have to do some deep soul searching to understand that I can do what I can do today, and tomorrow will worry about itself. Yeah. As you've heard from us, I hope you feel more comfortable with the tough questions about mental health and this whole, plastic problem. Actively cultivating a resilient mindset is tough, but it's necessary to take practice in developing this skill, because it can make it easier to speak with others about these uncomfortable facts. And talking to other people, that's important too. I gotta stress that, because when it comes to climate stuff in general, research shows that the number of people who are worried about climate change is actually a lot bigger than the number of people who are not worried about it. And the people, I gotta fix that. When it comes to climate change, research shows that the number of people who are worried about climate change is a lot bigger than the number of people who actually talk about it. So many people feel isolated in their worries, even when there's data showing that those of us who are concerned about climate change are in the majority. So talking to other people and destigmatizing conversations about the mental health impacts of climate change and plastic production, it actually really matters. And even better yet, it's listening to people share their stories and experiences. The power of listening is seriously underrated. Usually at this point in the episode, I would give some conversation starters here. But this time, I'm just going to challenge you to do two things. First, I hope you'll reflect after all these steps on our journey together, and consider how plastic production affects your own mental health. And also reflect on the things that help you cope, whether it's leaning on your faith, spending time in nature, or taking action with others. And the second thing is, I challenge you to listen. Ask a loved one how thinking about climate change and plastics production makes them feel. And try to just listen without judgment. So in the episode show notes, I'm I'm going to share some resources on mental health resources, especially about eco-anxiety and climate change that you can either use yourself or share with your loved ones. So make sure to look out for that in the episode show notes. And now that we spent some time talking about mental and emotional resilience, we can start discussing strategies for channeling our emotions into action. From the last episode, I hope this is what you might remember. We talked that recycling is a little bit inefficient. Well, that's just misleading. Recycling is inefficient and releases toxic chemicals. Reusing plastic is infeasible for so many types of plastic that are single use. And plastics can release microplastics, which we consume on a daily basis. So we have to figure out what else we could do with all this plastic that we have, right? I mean, we have so much of it everywhere, right? What are we going to do with that? I have a question. Do you remember? Well, I have a question. Do you remember the 3 R's? It's an acronym about like generally how we should deal with our waste. The 3R acronym, it was like taught for decades, I think, and it's one of the first things I can remember ever being taught about green waste, or I don't know, just being green, sustainability, stuff like in general. And it's been taught religiously. So the first 2 R's are reduce and reuse, and the last R is recycle. So it's important in that order, right? First is reduce, then reuse, then recycle. But I feel like we all know recycle, and then the first 2 R's are just like, oh yeah, whatever. It's like, but the order matters because reducing is our best bet. We should try to reduce our waste as much as general. And of course that applies to plastic as well. And then it's reuse it, right? Reuse the plastic before, we just throw it away and it goes to an incinerator or a landfill. And then last, even though we kind of praise it as if it should be the first, but it's last for a reason, recycle. So I think that's just one step in things that we could all do on an individual level, right? Of course, but as consumers of plastic products, we could try to do our own thing, but let's be real. The truth is a lot of plastic is unavoidable because there's just no alternatives to it. I mean, when you go to the store and you buy water bottles, it's going to come in plastic packaging. I mean, you get the water bottle, even if you somehow take it out the packaging, which I'm pretty sure is not legal. Even if you do that, they're still coming in a plastic water bottle. That's plastic, right? We have no other alternatives. So the way forward is to put pressure on industry and government to incentivize reduction of the plastic production, because most people just have no other option. We need strict rules to, of course, cut toxic emissions and protect communities from chemical disasters that are associated with the petrochemical industry. But we just need to incentivize as well the reduction in how much we produce plastic. It's crucial to push plastic reduction to protect people. You'll hear about people saying, oh, we just need to recycle better. But recycling, like we talked about, is inefficient, and there's a lot of issues with it, and it also releases toxic pollutants in the process. If we're really trying to protect these communities, our first, not the last, our first option should be reduction. Last episode, when I interviewed Cynthia, we heard how there's a whole lucrative multi-billion-dollar investment type of thing going on in the petrochemical industry, and that has allowed it to pump out more plastic and more pollution to poison more people in our world. And these investments, they're coming from mostly money-hungry companies and firms that want to maximize their profits while the world turns away from the idea of generally using fossil fuels as an energy source. And that's plan A for these investing companies, right? Invest in fossil fuels for as an energy source. But because it's becoming more stigmatized, right? Everyone is, even when they don't really care, is trying to look green and net zero in these days. Plan A is not really something that you want to do. It's kind of like not good for your PR. Plan B is investing in using fossil fuels to make plastic, because no one really understands that fossil fuels are used to make plastic. And the truth is, plan A and plan B, whether we use fossil fuels directly as an energy source or we use them to make plastic, they both are really bad for our planet and for our people. So we have to band together to counteract the well-funded, well-resourced petrochemical industry in their desire to just continue with the status quo, continue polluting. And recently, there have been several actions that I want to highlight that have been taken by Congress and have been brought up to address plastic pollution. For example, there's the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, and there's also the Protecting Communities from Plastics Act. And don't worry, I'm going to put all these bills in the show notes or episode description, wherever is appropriate, so you can learn more about each and even other proposals. Internationally, there's also treaties and binding agreements that we should actually be putting pressure on the U.S. to take more of a leading role in. For several of these efforts, the U.S. has deliberately taken a weaker stance because it's not in our best, it's not our desire to actually lead the way because we make a lot of money with petrochemicals and plastics. Again, there's a growing movement of people who are ready to put pressure on the U.S. Here at Moms Clean Air Force. When we raise our voices together, local officials, Congress, and of course our government, they have to listen to us. It's their legal obligation to. So there's things like the Global Plastics Treaty and the Basel Convention, which I can put links to in the episode show notes, so you can read more about. Here at Moms Clean Air Force, we hope you join. You want to get involved with 1.5 million members, a community of moms, dads, caregivers, and just people like you and me who are determined to protect future generations. And, we hope we'll get in contact with you soon. So we're at the point in the episode where we have some takeaways. We've been building up to this. Well, we've had 4 action levels of action items. Each episode have introducing a new one. And we've been going up from something that's like low-hanging fruit to now where we are at episode 5. So we're going to recap real quick. Level 1 was sign a petition to let the EPA know about your concerns about plastic pollution. And that's on the Moms Clean Air Force website under the tab Take Action. Level 2, sign up to get involved with Moms Clean Air Force. You can also do that on the website. There's a Get Involved tab. Level 3, come to a Moms Clean Air Force event near you or a virtual event if that's, if an in-person event is just not going to happen. And level 4, this is last episode now, I introduced an action item of supporting alternatives to plastic as much as possible. And part of that is recognizing that there are very few alternatives because of the large incentives that exist for the petrochemical industry. So a lot of work behind that action item actually is connected to this episode's idea of putting pressure on government. And then level 5, this is what we've been building up to. Again, I'm gonna get into it now. Learn more about Moms Clean Air Force work with plastic and petrochemicals. Just familiarize yourself with the resources. You've already been doing that. Hopefully you've signed the petition like in level 1 action item. Hopefully you've been trying to get involved, level 2. And level 3 and level 4 support all this. Generally, the idea of using our resources and going out and informing people about this. We want you to be encouraged to, speak or call your local officials in their offices and use the resources that we provided on the website to back you up as you speak. And generally, if you want to have these resources, a good link is www.momscleanairforce.org/issues/toxic-chemicals/plastics/ that was a long link. Just like that, we're at the end of our journey together. 5 episodes. Wow. Now you have so much knowledge about plastics that you could probably give an impromptu presentation if someone just asked you, I don't know why someone just randomly asking you, but what is plastic? You could talk for 45 minutes. And if you can't talk, hopefully you can redirect them to the website, the webpage for this podcast, and so that we can all, so that they can learn from there. Altogether, I just want to finish with a couple of words here. We can minimize our use of single-use plastic and look for alternatives when we can, again, but we can't, let's just be real, we can't avoid all the plastic in our world. There's plastic in our children's toys, our school's cafeteria, in the lunch trays. And if I order takeout right now, it's probably coming in a plastic takeout container. So it's nice to work on ourselves, self-improvement with plastic, but it's also necessary for us to push for systemic change. I hope you feel motivated to act towards both types, right? Don't get me wrong. Like, the personal change is not bad. It's good. But there's need for something bigger than just you, than just change on the inside of you. I hope that also it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. Try to go beyond motivation to find determination and courage, because motivation isn't always going to be there, right? I know I've learned a ton doing this research. For example, I'm going to speak from my experience, right? I've been writing up scripts, interviewing people, but if I don't, I had a lot of motivation to start it, but if I didn't have the determination to keep learning about all this heavy stuff and then want to talk to you about it, and knowing that I'm going to have to live with all this information, it's tough to just rely on motivation and then actually want to do something about it, when it's really heavy stuff like this. So I want to encourage us to, find that determination and courage to keep talking about this and spreading awareness about it. For me, someone who's interested in the field of healthcare, I have to be aware that in this field of healthcare where I want to work, there's a lot of plastic waste that's being produced all the time. And I have to be able to speak, and that requires determination and courage, to speak up and say that, we need to do better. I want to be able to say that I'm doing all that I can, right? And I want to be able to say that my field is doing better because I'm trying to minimize its use of plastic because of the and so if I could say that they're doing better because of me, even if it's on a small scale, I can feel better about myself. Do it at the very least, just so that whatever space you find yourself in, do it so that you can find yourself a little bit less guilty the next time you order your favorite takeout and it comes in a plastic container. So my name is Osasenaga Idahor. Thank you so much again for listening to this. I'm honored to have hosted this short podcast series. I have to give a special thanks to Elizabeth Bayshard, Sam Schmitz, Cynthia Palmer, and everyone who helped me put this together at Mom's Clean Air Force. Thanks to you all, and especially the interviewees who I had the honor of speaking to. And lastly, to you, the listener, I've said thank you, but we all want to say
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. You are appreciated. I want you to know that you are needed and that you are invaluable for the work that we need to do.